right. Welcome to another episode of Connect and Politic. We're here with a special guest. Please introduce yourself by telling us your name, where you're currently located, and your favorite snack.
Oh, my name is Tasha Levy. I am currently located in Seattle, Washington. I've been here for 5 years now. My favorite snack has to be these Mackle s'more cookies that I've discovered at a cookie place called Hello Robin in Seattle. And this woman makes the best chocolate chip cookies, but she puts it on a graham cracker with a marshmallow, and she calls it the Mackle s'more named after Macklemore, the rapper. But
Uh,
that Mackle s'more is so damn good. So
wow.
I've been trying to stay away from the snack actually, but on the weekends, that's like the treat that my partner ended up getting. I'm like, no, don't order it. I love the Smackle s'more though. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
the
The
s'more cookie.
is this does she have like a website? I mean, like, does she
Yeah.
deliver like
Mhm.
countrywide?
Hello, Robin. I think the only way we got them delivered now is because of Grubhub and the situation. So shame on Grubhub and all the money we've been spending on getting cookies delivered to the house. But yes, the Smackle S'more cookie is the snack on point right now.
Yeah, yeah. Nice, nice. What's the name of the store again?
Hello, Robin.
Hello, Rob.
Yeah, Seattle, Washington. It's off the chain.
I have to check that out.
I think prior to that, I used to like if it's just a regular snack or something to grab in the house is apples and peanut butter. So tastes like a candy apple.
Yeah, yeah.
Try that out.
That's a favorite. A lot of people love. A lot of people. That's a top selection for a lot of folks.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember your favorite food as a child?
Hmm. As a child, I believe my favorite food. Oh, that's hard to think about. What did I eat as a child? Um, well, it's still one of my favorite things to eat is steak. So, going out to eat at a restaurant, I would always order a steak as a kid. But when I was younger, I guess it's the cut that my mother used to get. I used to like the fat part on the steak, which is disgusting to me now, but I still like a really good steak in different ways than when I was younger. But steak was my favorite probably when I was a kid.
Yeah. And this was always when you were out. This wasn't at home.
Oh no, she cooks steak sometimes at home, and that's when I'd be sucking on the grizzle part, on the meat part.
Yeah.
The other thing now that it comes to me when I was really young, I liked frozen fish sticks, which was crazy. And so my sister, who's older than me, she used to tease me about that, about being addicted to fish sticks.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they still make those anymore.
I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure. And what would you have them with? Tater tots?
Tater tots, French fries. Yep.
Mm.
But I used to steal one out of the freezer though when my mom was cooking it and eat it frozen. So that when I say frozen fish sticks,
Oh,
I
you
mean
need frozen.
yeah, that was yeah. If I had to admit, that was one of my favorite things to eat.
Frozen fish
And
stick.
so my sister is probably the only one who knows that now. But she's like, "Oh, you're so disgusting." My mom would. I think my mom let me eat it because I would be begging for it, thinking, "Okay, you're gonna eat it, and you're not gonna like it. Okay, here." And I'm like, "Oh, this is good." Terrible. Terrible.
What's your favorite meal now as an adult?
Oh, favorite meal now? Probably being from the DC area, I still love crabs, blue crabs. And that's something that I miss being in Seattle where they have the Dungeness crab. So I often fiend for some crabs. That would be a happy meal for me. It's just to have some crabs
Yeah.
with some butter and some sauce, some special sauce.
What was the last time you had crabs?
Oh, I'm afraid to say. Blue crabs. Now I've tried the Dungeness here in Seattle. Maybe last week I had one. It's just it can't compare. But it's been a couple years since I've had blue crabs. I hear that you can have them shipped now, so I'm thinking about doing that, which means that I'll be paying probably close to $200 for some blue crabs, which is ridiculous. So Maybe during a holiday I'll consider.
Yeah, yeah.
But
What's
since
your
I don't have access to crabs, I guess one my favorite meals now might be um anything with like noodles. You know, there's a lot of like Asian cuisines here in Seattle, and
yeah,
so I didn't realize how much I love noodles. Now I grew up on oodles and noodles, which is different than getting like some noodles that are freshly made at an Asian restaurant. It's really good.
any particular um, you know, dish? Like pad thai, drunken noodles,
Oh, I
maybe.
love drunken noodle, and it took me a long time before I had it for the first time. So I'm like, where was drunken noodle all my life? Yeah, but drunken noodle is a great one
Okay,
with the basil. Love it.
nice. What was your fondest memory from childhood?
Hmm. I think my fondest memory might be like just playing outside with the whole neighborhood of kids. Like we had so much fun. We didn't even have much growing up in DC.
Mm,
Um, Easily I could be playing with anywhere between 5 to 15 kids at a time. You know, so we played double dutch, we rode our bikes, we played store with trash that was around in the brown dirt, collecting stuff and setting up stores. We um, played, you know, we skated. We did a lot of stuff together outside. And as I gotten older, I appreciate it more because I rarely see kids outside playing. And so those are my favorite memories growing up in DC is playing with a whole bunch of kids outside.
what part of DC did you grow up
Southeast, yep, Southeast DC near Stanton Road. Um, and it was the 80s, you know, it was a tough time in the area. It did kind of reflect, stereotypes of the area in terms of it being, you know, a tough place to live because of drugs or crime and poverty and what have you. But there was still such a strong community and strong community support during that time that I haven't experienced since.
in? Yeah. What do you miss about being a child?
Hmm. Screaming. I been thinking about that lately because I've been having the urge to scream. And I know I can't scream because somebody's going to call the police or somebody's going to think something's wrong. And so it makes me feel like, and I'm annoyed, which is funny because I'm annoyed by children screaming. And so if I hear a child scream, I'm like, what the hell are they screaming for, you know? But I miss that, like just being able to scream. And I've been reflecting on that in terms of how children are able to let it out and be free with that and scream because they're having fun or just to scream because they're just out in the world,
Yeah,
and how you have to control that or discipline that as an adult. But I've been having these fantasies about screaming like I did when I was a child. So I'll say that's one thing that I'm conscious of that I miss.
yeah. No, that's a great one. I mean, you know, yeah, that's a great one. I have we have two, and
How old are they?
12 and 9.
Okay, so they passed the screaming age a little bit. Maybe that when they tussling, they screaming.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like that screaming is so real. Like they scream all the time. And like, and it could just be, it doesn't even have to be a thing. It's just, it's just, I don't know, they just moving around. It's just, hey, it's just like, you're just like, what are you doing? Like, why so loud? That's a great one. And
I
yeah,
don't know at what point we stop, or we control it, but I've been feeling it in my body like I need to scream.
yeah. Huh.
I'm not even a loud person. People probably say I'm really quiet, but maybe that's why it's like now I just want to scream. But there's nowhere for me to do it.
Yeah. I think I've heard about like like screaming therapy where folks go into either in a group or whatever it is, and it just let out these like primitive sounds and like that kind of stuff. So I mean, it could be something to look into. Or I mean, you could just if you were your partner, you guys could just go. Um, you're right though. Like as an adult, if you scream, it's gonna.
I definitely can't scream around him. Then the police or somebody might think he's doing something. But we talked about it, like maybe trying to go out into the woods somewhere and scream. But
Yeah.
then I don't want to be out in the woods,
Right, right, right.
I've tried
Huh.
it a little bit in my car, but even then, I haven't been allowing myself to just be free to do it, like for real, for real.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's another one where I've seen videos of people. I mean, I've seen it even live where on the highway someone would be driving and like they're screaming at the like they're singing some song or whatever it
okay,
is, but it's like they're performing the song. Like
right.
so, that's another option as well.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. What were you like in high school?
Oh goodness. Um, I was probably Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Erica Badu before Erica Badu was Erica Badu. So in high school, I think I was really well-rounded and outspoken and popular, but for a variety of reasons that's interesting. Like I was really pro-Black as a child in ways that my peers were not. So I was kind of ahead of my peers. So in some ways it was isolating, but in some moments it was important to them. So definitely during high school, if something went down, my friends would be like, "Oh, you got to come to my class, and this is what's happening in my class." And somebody said something racist or something like that, and so I was real pro-Black, and I was like the Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X of the group. But I was also a dancer and had like a dance group, and I did fashion shows. So I was outgoing and well-rounded in the sense, like I wasn't just pro-Black and anti-party. Like I was pro-Black, I was partying, I was dropping it like it's hot. Well, probably not. I had like knee injuries. I was dropping it like it was cool. Winding and grinding. So I guess back then I was yeah, like a good mix of it. But the pro-Blackness has always been a thread from childhood to the present.
Huh. What sparked that thread?
I think I was living in DC. I recognized that we were socialized in elementary school to just know and appreciate Black history. So it wasn't even a question. So I recalled in elementary school, and maybe it was just maybe first or second grade, like an early reader, um, where I would read on the announcements a Black History fact every morning. So you had to go into a room and there's this microphone and speakers, and then everybody in the classes can hear you. And so it was like a privilege for me to be the one to read the Black History fact in the over the loudspeaker. But the whole school was Black, the principals, the teachers, there were no white people in the school. And so I didn't really think of it as something special. It was just something that we did. And we actually had to move when I was in sixth grade to Virginia. Actually, we had experienced a robbery, and it was violent. And we ended up having to move abruptly. And so I moved from Washington, D.C. to Virginia. And I went from being in an all-Black school to being maybe one of 4 or 5 Black students in the whole sixth grade. And my teachers, when I was leaving the school in DC, even though I was in a gifted and talented program, they told me that when I moved to Virginia, I was not going to be as smart as the white kids. And I was going to have to study before sixth grade started to get caught up. And that really concerned me. So I was afraid to go to the school with the white kids, So I was reading textbooks, and one of my teachers, I think, turned one of my B's into an A. I just think she actually falsified my report card. The one who told me that I wouldn't be as smart as the white kids. And when I got in the class, those kids were terrible. Not only were they not smart, they were dirty, they were misbehaving. And it really underscored for me, like, wow, I had all these warped ideas about what white people do and how they act and how they behave. And they were thieves, they were having sex, and they were upper class. These weren't like poor white kids, you know what I'm saying? But there was never any scrutiny on their behavior. It was scrutiny on the black kids' behavior, even though it was just few of us. And we weren't learning any black history. And so I was pissed at that point, like early, I'll say like just a couple of weeks in, a couple of months in, I was pissed because I'm like, I ended up thinking I was behind because I was black. I think the teacher just thought that the school systems were different.
Yeah.
And she assumed, yeah, this is one of the top school systems in the country, Fairfax County in Virginia. But those kids, we had some of the things that we were learning in class. I'm like, I learned this in second grade. And so it also um, unveiled to me this disparity in education, these assumptions around race. And so in sixth grade, I was pissed. And I confronted my teacher about it all the time. I was very vocal, always raising my hand, like, why are we not learning about black people right now? And she actually, my teacher, who was white, um, had a conversation with me saying that she was going to recommend me for gifted and talented or an advanced track. And I was just like, well, what about the other black kids, you know? Because I felt like my friends were just as smart, but I was outspoken, you know, and if I wasn't, you know, speaking up for myself, she wouldn't have paid attention and I wouldn't have ended up on an advanced track. And so even just experiencing tracking throughout school from that point on was also racial. And so that was what kind of just moving from DC to Virginia and having that experience, it really pissed me off. And I've just had a fire ever since, probably.
Got it. So you've been a mix of Malcolm and Erica.
Yes.
For Erica. So how do you think that childhood helped groom you into the person you are today?
Well, I guess, on one thing, I think I was considered an old folks child. At that time, my mom was 30 when she had me, which is normal now, but it wasn't back then. So I grew up around older people, and even the kids in the neighborhood, there was this gap. There weren't a whole lot of kids my age, they were all older. And so I think I was very mature at a young age. Um, that was kind of that felt lonely a lot of times if I'm in spaces with kids my age. And so I think I've had to grapple with that over the years of dealing with just kind of feeling like disconnected in some ways from people. And I think that's kind of always been a pattern, maybe. Um, Not always, but there's a certain kind of loneliness that I can feel lonely even in a room full of people, you know.
Mm.
Um, I had some pretty traumatic experiences in my childhood that affected sleep. And so for a long time, I've dealt with insomnia, probably until just a couple years ago. And so I had like severe nightmares and insomnia. Now we've been watching a lot of horror film just for the spirit of Halloween. We've just been in the house, so all the little horror films we watch on Netflix. And I remember loving horror films as a kid too. And then I'm like, oh, I was blaming childhood trauma on like years of nightmares, but it could be that I watched every horror film when I was a kid with no supervision. So I could have been in kindergarten watching, you know, The Exorcist. And
oh, wow.
Those are my favorites. And even though it scared me to death, like I watched The Exorcist over and over and over. And yeah, that's not good. That could have an impact on your psyche. So I've had, you know, I'm a vivid dreamer and then nightmares. And so that's something that I have been battling since childhood. Um, the other thing is I lost my parents young. So my mother passed away when I was 18, not young, but my father passed away when I was 25. And so I'm 43 now, but you know, I think about, well, I had them as a child, but I didn't get a chance to get to know them as an adult. And so I do feel that sense of loss, like in that way. And I can say that I'm friends with a lot of people that I grew up with since like elementary school. I still have, those are still like some of my closest friends. Yeah. And so I still have a relationship. That's what I'm saying, like that community was so strong back then. And so I kept in touch with some people when we moved from DC, and those are still my closest friends today. So
Yeah, that's great. What would you say, even though, so you had your mom for 18 years and your dad, you said 25?
mhm.
What would you say are some of the most important lessons you learned from each of them?
My mother enjoyed her own company. I guess that's one of the great lessons. So even though I know the loneliness for me is not about being alone, because like I said, I could be in a room full of people and feel like I'm not connecting maybe. But she enjoyed her own company, and I've been reminding myself of that. So she would like it can be a Tuesday. She have on like some furry slippers and some fur around her neck, a boa or something, and have her beer. She turn on the the record player, play her records, and we had a wall that was a mirror, the whole wall, okay? And she would dance in front of that mirror. And it'd be like Tuesday at 7 p.m. And I used to, as I got older, I used to be like, Mom, what you doing? And she would say, I'm enjoying myself. And she did that all the time. That was like a routine for her. She used to say that dancing was exercise because she would be in the living room dancing by herself. And so she enjoyed her own company, and I've learned to do that. And so I even been dancing a lot by myself, and it makes a difference. I definitely learned that from her. My father and I, we weren't really close. As I was growing up, there was some tension between him and my mom at one point. So I stopped seeing him regularly, and became really angry with him until she passed away. So when she got sick from cancer, he made a promise that he would take care of me. And of course, I'm 18. I'm like, I'm grown now. It don't matter. And then I decided, well, let me just give him a chance. He's my only parent now. And we became the best friends, between 18 and 25. And so I felt really lucky that I was open to building a relationship with him before he passed. He died unexpectedly. And really, I couldn't have asked for a better last conversation with him. And so he was also kind of fun loving and like to have a good time, like to joke around. And so, because I'm often, especially with my work, I'm involved in very serious matters all the time. I think the both of them, the best lessons is that you only have one life, it is short, and you got to enjoy yourself. And so I try to remind myself of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I think one of the things, do you remember the songs or the music your mom would play when she would dance?
Oh, yeah. But she loved all the stuff that was the hits at that point. I mean, she had like hundreds and hundreds of albums. And she loved Teddy Pendergrass was her favorite. She had a life-size cardboard cutout of Teddy Pendergrass. I might even have a picture of me as a baby holding his leg. um, and
Ted.
she had parties on the weekends, and sometimes for me, if I wanted to stay up, she let me stay up late anyway, but I had to be in the room. But if I wanted to be nosy and see what they're doing, I would ask if I could do the record player, play the records. And I was like maybe as young as 7 or 8, playing the records while they dance and drink and play cards and stuff. But she loved Teddy Pendergrass and Luther Vandross. There's one playlist, I was just listening to it on Spotify, that I put together called Grown Folks Music. And it was like all the songs that she really liked. And so the first one is Luther Vandross' Bad Boy, Having a Party. That's like the best like cookout song. But I remember she went crazy over that song. And that was during a time where an album, you can get a single as a record, and so you had to go back and start the needle over just to start the song over. And she played that song over and over and over again. She loved Marvin Gaye, Earth, Wind and Fire, Atlantic Star. Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff. But she liked to dance, and so if it was upbeat and had a little groove to it, she was always known to get the party started. And then we had parties in the house all the time. But
Yeah.
she loved that Teddy Pendergrass for sure.
You,
Teddy was the first person to have all ladies nights.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself listening to the same music she listened to?
Yeah, because I was the DJ, so I still listen to that stuff. So my partner gets frustrated. I mean, he listens to everything, and I'm still stuck in the 80s. The 80s and the 90s. So if I listen to anything else, it's like 90s, new school rap, and then that's it. So he's been trying to get me to step outside of that. And it's like, there's new music. You don't have to listen to all these oldies but goodies and then Biggie,
Yeah,
every weekend. So when he's trying to get me in a good mood or something, he'll go put on some, El DeBarge or something, thinking that's what I want to hear.
yeah.
Or Anita Baker. And I'm like, you can play something new. You can play something new.
So Sade,
Yes, yes.
Mayfield, gotcha.
Yeah.
Um,
Prince.
so, what are your favorite things to do for self care?
Lately, I've been taking bubble baths with lavender, or they got some CBD joints now. I haven't really explored them further, but they're like bath bombs with CBD in it. It should be relaxing, but that helps to prepare me to go to sleep or relax. And then it's like just some time I can take out for myself, and I usually would listen to music or something while I'm taking a bubble bath. And it's funny because some people think that's not clean. I know I argue with some people in my family, like, I don't take baths, just sitting in the water. Like, I enjoy that. And what else do I do? I think I've been trying to remind myself to actually connect with my friends and family and not get so caught up in work. And so been reminding myself to call somebody every day just to stay, especially since I don't live near my family. I live so far away. And so I think that's important for self-care, is to be connected and remain connected to family and community, and not just focus on self, me, even though that's important. And the other thing I do is drink and dance by myself if I have to. Sometimes Eric joins me. We had a cat with his cat that he had for 15 years. She passed away in May. But I'm glad we were home during the quarantine. So we spent, I knew she was dying. And so I spoiled her to death. But when I would dance, he'd be asleep or something. And I would come out and dance. And she would jump down, plop down in the middle of the floor while I danced around her. And so that's, I think, has helped me a many a night to just try to unwind or take care of myself.
Yeah. What are some things you do for self growth?
For self growth, I read. I try to maybe read books that people suggest that have helped them, or I try to learn new skills. Like I've been trying to take care of plants. I have one back here. I have a whole bunch of them downstairs. I used to have a brown thumb, and so I had determined that I need to learn how to take care of a living thing. So I even have a book now called How to Treat a Plant or something that I read at night. And so I like to learn new skills, maybe even to move towards, now that I know I can keep a plant alive for a couple years, that I need to learn how to grow some food. Um, and so I read, I've been listening to podcasts. Um, I think those are the two main things for self growth. I think also tapping into mentors and some folks who have a bit of wisdom. I do that from time to time.
Yeah. What are your, you mentioned podcasts. What are your top three podcasts or your favorite podcasts?
Well, recently I had gotten into Lovecraft Country radio, which was actually pretty intellectual as much as it was cultural. So if you've watched Lovecraft Country, people, did you watch it?
No.
Oh, okay. You have to watch it. You have to witness it. It was, it wasn't perfect, but it was so good to me. But I think it's still something to witness that happened in Black television history. And so they had a podcast to go with it, and it was just so thoughtful, like every little thing. And what I loved about it is that it seemed to be a sharp critique of white supremacy in ways that we haven't seen maybe before, or at least not in a series like this. And so I really enjoyed watching Lovecraft Country and then jumping on the podcast.
Yeah.
I guess that was the only podcast I listened to regularly. The other ones are just usually episodes that I pick up from, Eric would send me episodes from different ones. And one that we've been listening to recently is What the Fuck Happened Today? That's where I get my news. It's just a news thing. But usually it's just like episodes of different things. I've learned everything from I learned about ayahuasca on somebody's podcast. I've listened to Raphael Sadiq. I remember I listened to a really interesting interview with him on somebody's podcast. So I'm terrible with names and stuff. So I can't even tell you who the people are. Yeah. It's just, I just like browse through episodes if it's something interesting to listen to.
Nice. So, are you into books?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
What are your, any particular genre of book that you like?
Oh, yeah, mostly history, nonfiction. I never really got into fiction like that. Maybe just recently, but I've always been a big consumer of nonfiction. I teach Black studies, and so that's kind of my lane.
Okay. What do you find top 3 most impactful books?
I feared that you would ask that question. Out of anything, I was like, what if he asked me about the favorite book situation? I think 3 probably is manageable. I could never do 1, but I think the one that I'm always thinking about is Aimé Césaire's Discourse on Colonialism. Uh-huh. It was published in the 1950s, and he's from Martinique, Black man, but it's like one of the fiercest criticisms of American empire and capitalism. And so I love that. Any reason I haven't assigned it in class, but I do find reasons to read aloud passages. And so it's not my words, it's his words, the way he talks so bad about them white folks. Boy. I mean, it starts off, Europe is indefensible. That's the sentence. That's how it starts off. Europe is indefensible. And he goes on to talk about, particularly in the 50s, right after you had the Holocaust and World War II, how people can easily point to Hitler and say that's where racism is, that's what the problem is. But he challenges white people to think about the Hitler within them and how they also promote and reproduce exclusion and oppression, even when they think of themselves as liberals or allies. It's not just Hitler, the worst of it. And so that's my favorite. I read that aloud to my students all the time. And one of the best historical books, I think, was Black Reconstruction by W.E.B. Du Bois. He published that book in the 1930s, but it's a history of Reconstruction that really I still think is still the best history of what happened to Black people after the end of slavery and how did they lose their rights. So it didn't just happen immediately after slavery. You had a moment that the country could have gone into a different, path. And Black people did, hold political office right after slavery and made so much progress. And then all those rights were taken away. The Ku Klux Klan was founded. And he traces it from from state to state in terms of moving from slavery to basically Jim Crow segregation. But what I love about how he frames it, there's a couple of chapters. It's a big book. It's a small book, but it's long, like 700 pages. But the first chapter, even if you read the first 6 chapters, the first chapter is the Black worker. The second chapter is the white worker. The third chapter is the planter. And what he shows is that slavery and race really enslaves white people, particularly poor white people, by making them think that they are aligned with the planter class and not with the black worker. And that has been the history of white folks in this country, to align themselves with white elites, even though it's against their own interests, just because they're invested in this idea of whiteness. And so he talks about it as a general strike, that Black people were very thoughtful about how they were refusing to work during slavery, and that it should be a part of the labor history. And he has a wonderful chapter called Back to Slavery, and also Propaganda of History. So if I assign, I ain't gonna ask the students to read 700 pages, they barely read 40 pages a week. So I do assign like those chapters that I just mentioned, just about 5 or 6 of them. It's really good. I think a third one might be, and all of these are like more so primary sources from a long time ago, not anything that I could say. I wouldn't, there are a lot of books now, but all-time favorites and impactful, I would say too, is Ida B. Wells is maybe Southern Horrors. And she led an anti-lynching campaign in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And again, she used a pen name, though, when she was writing these articles about lynchings. And she did some investigations to figure out why were Black men being lynched at the thousands. And she lost two of her best friends because of lynching. And she found that, Black men were not assaulting white women. Black men were being lynched because they wouldn't stay in their place. So if they made too much money, or if they were successful, if they didn't step off the street or didn't bow their heads, any little infraction, mostly over jealousy, is why Black men were lynched. And some in 100, thousands of Black men were lynched, over 100 Black women were lynched. A lot of those men were kids, in terms of just being like 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And so there were a lot of young males that were lynched, but she is ruthless with those words. So one of my favorite parts in the book is where she talks about, and I could be getting this mixed up with the Red Record. There's the Red Record and there's Southern Horse, but she talks about how Black men don't have to rape white women, because the white women just throw themselves at the Black men. They want the Black men, And so for her to write something like that, and the 1890s, it's like, damn. So she's one of my favorites. I think those are some great books to return to.
Yeah, no, that's a powerful list. If you were to write a book, what would it be about?
Child, I'm supposed to be writing a book now. Well, I am writing a book now. Writing a book is so hard. Ugh. So I'm writing a book now, not to say like this would be the book that I would write about, but it is the book that I'm writing about. I'm writing a book about the ideological shift in Black Republican politics. And so I trace how Black Republicans have gone from liberal to conservative in a specific, relatively short period of time between Nixon and Reagan. So it's right after the Civil Rights Movement, I guess the early post-civil rights movement from the late 60s to the 1980s. And I do this just to try to understand racial polarization and ideological polarization in our two-party system. And part of what I'm trying to argue is that the two-party system is a corruption almost. And so a lot of times people would say, well, Black people are, one-party people. They don't have the sophistication to use the two-party system. You got to be in both parties in order to have some power. But the ideological differences are so vast between, Black Democrats and Black Republicans. And even for Black Republicans, they have gone so far to the right over the past, 40 years or so, that there's no way for there to be an effective two-party strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think, with the election coming up and the ticket that we have goes to show that there's like severe limits to a two-party system. And so it's not that Black people haven't tried both parties. Black people have tried both parties. Black people used to be all Republican before they became all Democrat. And so we have been willing to switch, but we're not willing to align ourselves mostly with a party that has submitted to white, like brazenly submitted to white racism and white nationalism. And so the Republicans could have done a lot of, I mean, they missed a lot of opportunities to get more Black people involved, but they can't do that because they don't want to do that because they want to appeal to the average white voter who's racist. And so that's what my book is about. This was an extension of my work in graduate school. I started on it as a master thesis that when I went to Cornell, my PhD was, I wrote about it at Northwestern. And so now I'm like way past the time where I should have put the book out. Now there are like 2 other books on the same topic, which is giving me stress, but that's what I'm working on now.
So, yeah, that's good. But, okay, just a quick question concerning the framing of the book. I think you said, you're looking at the transition from, say, the Nixon era to the Reagan era. And is it just a comparative between, I guess, Black Republicans during those 2 eras? Or are you, coming forward even till current?
People always want me to come to current. I'm trying to write a historical book so I don't have to deal with no current clowns, okay? No, I cannot explain Herman Cain. No, I cannot explain, what's his name? Gifted Hands. What's the Gifted Hands?
Ben Carson. Ben
Carson.
Yeah.
No, I can't explain, Candace Owens. I could, but I don't have anything that's like, other than cuss words. So that's not my interest. So my interest and ability is to look at it from a historical point to say, how did we even get to this point?
Yeah.
Where you have Black Republicans who are aligning themselves with the worst of right-wing politics and at all costs, And so the Nixon and Reagan era, it's not just Nixon and Reagan, it's from the late 60s through the 1980s, just tracing their rhetoric, their platforms, their agendas, their strategies to have an impact in the Republican Party and what happens, And so basically what happens in the Reagan era is that they identified their own Republicans to represent their policies, which displaced like a longstanding leadership in Black Republican politics. Because Black Republicans have been the most liberal constituency. They were trying to push the Republican Party to address racial inequality. And so conservatives within the party, once they became more powerful, ended up displacing traditional liberal Black Republican leadership with these Black conservatives. And they were the ones who really pushed a transformation in the relationship that Black people had with the Republican Party. And so they identified their own folks, which was different. And I can't, maybe I'll talk about it in the intro. I know I'm gonna have to talk about it when, I talk about the book. I mean, the book is one of the hurdles I have to do to keep my job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to start entertaining that question in terms of what it means for today. Now, of course, I could say we need to understand how racial conservatism impacts the political system because both parties have moved to the right because of conservatism. But people just want to know about Ben Carson, I did an interview one time and somebody was like, interviewed me. He just wanted to know is Spike Lee a Republican? Is Bill Cosby a Republican? It's like, oh my gosh.
No. So the reason first of all, no, that's not why I asked. Yeah,
it comes up a lot. Yeah.
I can imagine, but I'm a student of history as well. I study history in, it's one of my majors in undergrad as well. But what I would say is, I was just wondering, is it a comparative analysis or longitudinal?
Yeah, I trace or chart the I wouldn't say gradual, but the transformations over like a 20-year period.
Yeah. When do you anticipate having the first draft?
I need to have the first draft done probably by summer, next summer.
Mm. Yeah.
That's probably going to be, optimistic given we've been in a pandemic and it's been hard to do research. And so I'd like to have 2 more years, but I have to just finish it because this has been hanging over my head. So by next summer, I'll.
Well, I'll look forward to send me a if you need someone to I would love to read your draft.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you start reading, be like, oh, this is so boring.
So I mean, you've alluded to this, several times as what you do in your professional life. So you're a professor of history. Um, is
Well,
it
assistant professor in African American studies.
okay? Um, is it what you imagined doing as a kid?
It is actually. I mean, as a kid, I think I wanted to be a teacher. And so early on, I wanted to be a teacher. And I think I started off though, once I got to high school, I think being an entrepreneur was more important to me. And so I went to Hampton first and majored in entrepreneurship, but the major was new and disorganized. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to do something more traditional, and went to history and thought about education, but that ended up putting me back on the education track. When my first job out of college, I was a teacher at a charter high school in DC, and then I returned to the school where I graduated from. I ended up graduating from University of Virginia, and that's I was director of the Black Cultural Center and assistant dean for the Office of African American Affairs. And I was only 23 years old, and I felt like that was my dream job. Like I was doing the programming, Black History Month or throughout the year, Martin Luther King celebration, Kwanzaa, Juneteenth. Even we founded a Juneteenth celebration in Charlottesville. And so that was a dream job. I felt like I'm only 23. I guess I got to be doing something else or something bigger. And so then when I decided to go to graduate school, I decided to do African American studies, and I got a PhD, and I still didn't think that I would go into education the way that I have. I was planning to, again, maybe fuse it with entrepreneurship. And so I was thinking of doing Black history curricula for teachers. And it was something that you can't really talk about as a PhD student because they only train you to be in the academy. And it wasn't really an openness to doing other things, I would say. Not anything like that. Not at the time. Maybe now it's probably shifting because the job market is just different. But it was like a secret that I wasn't going to go into the academy, that I was going to do this thing. It didn't work out with the person I was working with who tried to steal my intellectual work. And so I got myself back on the track to become a professor. I got to get a job and do, what I was trained to do. And so I ended up in the academy. And so now I'm trying to do both. I launched a couple years ago, it was 22 years ago, I launched Black Star Rising. And so blackstarrising.com is a Black history hub for not just educators, but anyone who wants to continue to engage and learn or explore Black history and culture. And so in 2018, the way I launched it was with a course called Woke 101 and Beyond, seven strategies to debunk racial ignorance and elevate your woke status or something like that. And I did it on Zoom. This was before Zoom became popular, So I was like one of the first people to sit up there and do Zoom classes. And so I had it was open to the public. It wasn't anything I do affiliated with the school. And I used like Facebook Learning Group, and it was a good experience, I think. And then I started to work with teachers more directly in K through 12 around ethnic studies and professional development. And so now I'm still building out the Black history curriculum. And so right now I do have 2 units that's available to folks that should be of interest. I'm pretty proud of it. I think it turned out really good. So it's a different kind of engagement with like Carter G. Woodson, who founded Black History Month. I know people are tired of Black History Month or think it's the shortest month of the year, but Carter G. Woodson is like, there are few young people. I don't think I ever come across young people who know who Carter G. Woodson is. I introduce in these units people to Black studies, and so it's I think it's a good engagement, and so I'm still working on some study sessions and other units that I hopefully will be more expansive by the time Black History rolls around. I've also was one of the first people to teach a college course on Black Lives Matter. And so I'm working on creating one that could be open to the general public too, and understanding Black Lives Matter in historical context. And so I can say I have, like, especially since I became pro-Black in 6th grade, like real pro-Black, I've been pretty consistent and have been able to, push my professional career in alignment with what I've always been driven by since I was a kid. And so I do feel really blessed in that way.
Yeah. No, that's good. Is there anything on your bucket list you want to learn or do?
A bucket list. Ooh, in these times, I just don't ever want to get the corona. So I don't know about a bucket list. I guess one thing I think about doing that I haven't learned to do is swim. And I'm also thinking about this in preparation for whatever is to come in terms of the downfall of empire. Like, these are not good times. And so I've been trying to mentally prepare and physically prepare.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to learn how to swim. Things go down. I need to learn how to swim. So I was supposed to learn this summer, but then the pandemic stopped that. So at some point I need to learn how to swim. So this is just not like a major bucket at all. This is just a little small something.
No,
That's
that's good.
of it.
That's good. Is there anything you want to unlearn?
Anything that I want to unlearn? Oh, that's a good question. I guess self-doubt is always, a challenge. And I've been working on it in terms of trying to unlearn doubting myself a lot. I can't think of that's something I'll have to keep thinking of. So thank you for the question. Is there anything I want to unlearn?
Yeah.
But I do struggle with self-doubt probably every day. And so I work on unlearning that.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is or another way, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, I probably would have taken care of my body more. I know people kept telling me that. My aunts tell, take your vitamins and go to the doctor if I had knee injuries I never did anything with or never saw a doctor for. And so now I'm paying for it. So I feel like I should have. And all the time I was so super skinny and I was eating all that stuff. Now I'm like, damn, caught up with me. You gotta eat right. You can't wait till you get older to start eating right. So I think I would have had a healthier diet and probably took better care of myself when I was younger because it's all catching up with me now. I guess I would have told my younger self that like I have power and agency to change things, and that things can change for the better. Because I think I have had a lot of moments of hopelessness or depression, of being stuck in what has happened to me, And I was told maybe when I was in college by a tarot card reader, actually, this is a long story, that things would get better, and I believed her. But it took a tarot card reading for that to happen. But it was just like, whatever the card said, it was like I got the worst card, which was like death. And like I remember it was like a skeleton on it. But then I also got the best card in the deck, which was like the Lotus or something, I remember. And so I guess I wish I had known that I didn't have to be stuck in depression or feeling like the things that had happened to me will always define me.
Mm.
And if I had gotten that message early on that I don't have to be defined by these things, then it would have freed me up earlier than it did. And I sometimes have that issue with, like if, for instance, there was a student who gave me a disability. Now they say they got disabilities for all kinds of things. And I don't want to be dismissive, but my goodness. She told me that she has severe anxiety, and so she wouldn't be able to speak in class because she's an introvert or something like that.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, to speak in class though? And so she had her paperwork and everything. And, I had asked her, just as someone who's dealt with fears or anxiety and depression and, fear, I'm like, every day I get up, my heart rate beats, I get sweaty. Like that happens. And then you start talking, it goes away. And not to say that people don't have severe cases of this, but you don't have to accept that you are an introvert and therefore can't talk to people. Like, how you going to get along in the world? And so here she is, 18, 19 years old, thinking she can't speak to people, a group of people in the room. And I was like, you're going to have to test yourself. Okay. And if you feel like you're about to have a panic attack, you just put your hand up like this and I'll stop. But you don't have to accept that that's who you are, that you have this disability. It's like, who told you that? It's normal to be fearful, but the more you expose yourself to it, the more your body will learn to get over itself. Like you're not going to pass out. Nobody's going to kill you. I'm like, what's the worst thing that can happen in these situations? Somebody doesn't agree. Somebody said you sound stupid. So what? F them, just keep talking or just challenge yourself. And she said nobody had ever told her that. That usually in her classes, they accept that she can't talk to people in class. And so I would call on her a couple times, and she started talking. And then she tells me, I think it only took like 2 times. I'm thinking over the course of the quarter, we would build ourselves up. And so a couple times I figure out, okay, I'll call it. After the second time I called her in class, she was like, okay, I don't want to have the special accommodation. I feel comfortable now. And I'm like, after 2 times? Okay. But she would thank me and was like, nobody never told me that. And I'm like, how is it that she's surrounded by people who are saying that she can't speak to people in a group because she's so fearful? And so come on now, you can't be defined by, these things. That whatever happened to you where you do have some real anxiety about it, you have some agency to change that. You don't have to take on these labels and just decide that that's who you are, and so you can't do something. That's unacceptable. And I don't mean it's not hard. It's difficult, of course, but you have to. That's how you get over like fears or phobias and stuff. You have to expose yourself to it, and then build up with stamina for it.
Indeed. No, that's great advice. What would you say is the best advice you've received about money?
About money?
Yep.
I don't come from a community of folk who've done well with their money. I wish I had some advice. No, my godmother's really good with money. I didn't like her advice though. Her advice was not to tell people what you got, because then they're gonna keep on asking. They're gonna keep coming to you with your problems. And I don't necessarily like to think about it like that. She definitely pushed for me to save though, because she always felt like you shouldn't have to you should never be in a position to depend on people. So always put money aside for yourself and save money so you don't have to ask people for anything. And again, that's not like the best. I mean, it's good advice, but I don't like for it to sound selfish, but I think I probably could have done better over time saving. Mm-hmm. And lately it does, when things happen, I had a $5,000 bill on my car recently, which my partner, my finance advice now is to ask my partner to pay for it. But I did have money saved, and so while I didn't want to put it on the car, and I didn't have to, but things happen, and so you just always want to have enough. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to, you know, you that you don't have anywhere to go or someone to help you in a financial situation. So I think saving is important, but I didn't get really good financial advice. And so I'm actually just learning. A couple years ago, I signed up for the Budgetnista. She's
Yep.
Nigerian, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I've learned a lot of great things from her program about finances. And so that's where I get most of my advice from the
No,
last couple of years.
yeah, she's good. I like she speaks, she speaks in the language that her audience understands, um, and her advice is as good as any.
Oh
Um,
yeah, she's good. And so I've been following a lot of her programs and the other women that she brings on, and she has the Live Richer Academy that covers all kinds of stuff. And so I've learned from that.
nice.
But I didn't get any good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's something I think generally we need to do a better job at, right? Like there are certain pillars of life, be it health. I mean, a few things you actually mentioned, right? Like health, finance, relationship management. There these things that are vital to
Hmm.
having a well lived life, are things that we, very few of us um, talk about.
Yeah.
And this is even the ones that, know the right way, right, or the better way. We still don't share this information. But I'm hopeful. I think given the current um, ubiquity of information, right, with with the age we're in, I think it allows for now. The thing is, there's a lot of information out there, but like for you, for instance, you found say the Budgetnista, and that's it, right? So, and then if you have like younger siblings or just younger folks in your community, to link them up early with that
Mhm.
information, so then it becomes second nature. Because for a lot of these things, health, finance, etc., there's a big part of it is the emotional component, right? So
Mm.
there's um, I think a lot of times we think it's just, oh, if you understand the strategy and you understand this, but if you're not there emotionally, then you're still at square one. So
No, that's so true.
yeah,
That's so true. I do remember one of my mentors and just being like, 19 years old, I was being hard headed. You just think you know it all at that age and don't listen. But I did have a mentor who tried to give me a plan for saving so that by the time I'm like, I don't know, 50 or something, I would have saved $1 million. And I've shared it with my nephew a couple years ago. So he ain't listening, I'm sure. But it's like it's possible,
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's a
Pay
yeah, I mean,
yourself first. Now, I use pay yourself first in different respects in terms of working and writing,
yeah,
but I think that's probably good advice for money too, is to pay yourself first in terms of whatever future that you want to see for yourself, that you pay yourself first and, put 10, 15% down on that every time.
indeed, indeed. What has been the toughest thing you've had to tackle, and what helped you get through it?
Um, well, I think recently, definitely it was hard losing my mom, but recently, I mean, it's even hard to share with people as how tough it was. But let me see. Um, when we moved from DC, I had mentioned that a robbery had forced us to move. My mother was attacked by the person. He actually raped her and stabbed her, almost killed her. Um, and so I remember when he finally went to jail, he got like 2 life terms or something, but they said he would be up for parole. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll still be alive when he's up for parole. And so last summer he was up for parole. And was in an area where I could have gone to the parole hearing. So I'm like, oh, I'm in New York. The parole hearing is, I don't know, in New Jersey or something, not in Seattle. So I was like, okay, this was meant for me to be, that I can go and defend my mother, so that he wouldn't be released. And when I had decided that I would do it, I immediately had a panic attack. And I was by myself. I was in Ithaca, New York, doing another job. And so I wasn't home. And so I had to call my partner. He had to actually talk to get me from a restaurant to the place where I was staying. And then I decided that they told me, well, I didn't have to be there in person, that they can Skype me in. And so I was going to do that. But then my family intervened and was just like, why do you want to do this? Maybe writing the letters is enough, because we also had opportunity to write the letters. And so I had an opportunity to write a letter to, I guess it's like a victim's testimony or something. And I had to write a letter recounting all of that. And that was so incredibly hard. Oh, I don't know how I got through it. It's like through the grace of God that I got through that experience, and then having to recount it. Because as a child, no one, it happened to me too, but I never got a chance to tell my side of the story. Even when I was a child, like my mom used to be like, when she survived it, she got out the hospital, she was like, well, one day you're gonna have to go to court and give a testimony of what happened that day. And every night before I go to bed, which was a horror also, maybe for 3 years, I would think about that night. Let me remember in case someone calls me to testify. And they didn't call me till 3 years after it happened. And by that time, I couldn't remember some of the details. And so I got mad during the deposition as a 13-year-old, and they stopped it. So I never got a chance to tell my story. So had to write this letter to tell what happened to me as a child that was there. Even though I wasn't in the apartment, I knew that something was happening in the apartment when it was happening. And I wrote in the witness statement that, my mom was stabbed 10 times that I could, and raped 4 in a 2-hour period. And my sister, who was, she's 11 years older than me. So it happened when I was 10, she was 21. But she said, no, mom was stabbed 40 times. And I'm like, God damn, like I had even misremembered. And I remember it was that high. That just seems impossible that somebody could withstand that and survive it. My mother was 5'4", very petite. She was strong and fiery, but it's like 40 times this happened. And this man had attacked other women too. Her case was the worst, but he had even attacked a mother in front of her 2 kids. And so learning all of this over again, just last year, it was horrible. And my partner did come out to New York to be with me, so I was really lucky to have him. The other thing I do to, I guess, deal with it or overcome it is to, I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And so even though I don't like labels and I don't think of myself as a Buddhist necessarily, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, if you've seen What's Love Got to Do with It, the Tina Turner story, it's a science to it. The vibrations of it has been very helpful. And I started initially to cure insomnia. It was the only thing that cured my insomnia. A mentor of mine was a Buddhist and had suggested it. And so that's how I started, but it really does make a difference. And I think the vibrations of these syllables somehow taps into something. And so chanting has helped me a great deal get over a lot of things. And I think maybe even just being able to tell my story, as painful as it was, I did get a chance to tell my story. And so I think it probably helped me get over, a hump of extreme difficulty, And what else? I think I felt like, especially, I realized I was the same age as my mom too when it happened. So it just seemed to come together in a weird way, but he didn't get out. And so I was able to, fight for her in a way that I know she always tried to protect me, but I think she'd be proud that me and my sister supported each other. It was something like me and my sister never talked about after it happened. So that was the first time of us even speaking on it, like to remember and to say, then I guess the hardest part, all of it is hard, but every time I think about it, I break down because she was only 21. Oh, I'm sorry. I was a kid, but I blamed her a lot. Because I felt like I was a kid and she treated me like I was an adult. And she told me everything that happened and where she was cut. And I remember she told me, like, don't cry, you're going to have to be strong. And since I teach young people, 1921, they're not grown. They are in older bodies, but their brains are still not developed. And so at that age, you do make decisions that, you would think, okay, you're grown, you shouldn't be thinking this way. But I think about her being 21 and I'm sorry, she had to be strong and I never saw her cry about it. And I resented her for treating me like I wasn't a child at 10 years old. But I think I hurt more because she had to take care of us and take care of our family situation. And I've shared this with my nephew too because he has issues with his mom or whatever. But thinking like, well, she may not be as expressive sometimes, and she's great. She has a wonderful personality, but I guess we all go through our things where we close down or whatever. But she immediately learned that she had to be strong for someone else. And so I always kind of now think about what has she lost or she didn't get a chance to, there was nobody there to take care of her. Oh, so that just it breaks my heart because, like I said, I teach people that age and should they scared to talk in class. It's a different generation in terms of responsibility, but I feel like, gosh, I feel for my sister. She's a wonderful person, but that was a lot. That was a lot for a 21-year-old.
Are you guys close currently?
I think we probably are closer now. I never lived. I think since I graduated from college, I moved away from my family. So being away from them, I guess I'm not as close as if we live in the same areas, but we definitely are closer after having to come to terms with that since last year. But there was always a gap with us because she's 11 years older, which is a big difference. Of me being the little kid trying to run behind her. So now we're both old. I've caught up with her, so we're closer now than we couldn't be.
The great equalizer.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but thanks for letting me just get it out.
No. I mean, it's I think it's again these are human beings are dynamic, right? And so I think we should all have opportunities to laugh, cry, scream, be quiet.
Yeah.
And so this was and especially if you've been through extreme trauma, what you find is rare. Like you see that you brought up something. You say you and your sister haven't spoken about this for years or whatever it is. And it's like if you talk to folks who were front line in combat, for instance. They rarely talk about it. Um, I mean, it's like you know, you almost I have a theory about this because I have a similar experience, but I think the body, um, as a coping mechanism, helps you block those memories,
Mhm.
you know, to not uh, because you have to grow, right? And the body is interested in growing and becoming better, because those things are so dark that if you fixate on it, you just break, you know, you just crash and break. And so, um, but no, uh, so we're gonna go the other extreme. Where do you feel most at home and happy?
Um, Probably out in nature, which is funny because growing up in DC, like trees were dangerous. So I never wanted to live even near trees. But as I've gotten older, I've grown very appreciative of nature. And I think when I was living in Charlottesville, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I moved in with an older friend momentarily who lives like literally in the woods. Like you make a right in the woods and drive a mile, you know, and that's her house. And even though I was scared to move out there, it was um it was just a wonderful experience. In some ways, I think that's when a lot of things started to come up for me, just being reflecting, or maybe even a spiritual experience being in the woods. And moving to the Pacific Northwest, especially, it's just gorgeous out here. So I've had grown to appreciate the trees and not see them as danger where dead bodies are, you know. um, Having grown up in a city. But so I think the times where I feel most at ease or at home is if I go out onto the lake, um, watch the sunset and sunrise. And so I take a lot of pictures and share them of like sunsets and sunrises in Seattle. And so that's been a new development, I think, that makes me feel at home.
No, that's great. For a fun question, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what will you do?
Oh man, you know, I think about this all the time and I don't even play the number. So I've been trying to tell myself I got to play if I'm going to win.
Right, right.
um, I think first I'd probably pay off my debt. It's just like student loan debt. Even though it's on pause right now, it's a dirty trick because I'm sure it just extends, you know, extends the life of it and all. So I think I'll pay off my debt, probably go ahead and pay the debt off of a couple friends and family, like just get that part out the way. Is the debt situation is something I think about a lot. And because it's like a pandemic, you know, things have changed in terms of what I plan for. I think before the pandemic, I would probably like travel the world with my family because they ain't been nowhere. I'm usually, you know, the only one who has gone somewhere or moved out or something, but I would like for them to have more international experiences, even outside of the US. Um, and then those are like having those kinds of experiences are invaluable, you know. But now the pandemic, I think I would probably just be preparing for the Walking Dead. So I don't know if this means like doing underground tunnels or buying a ticket to be one of the people who can go to Mars or another planet when this thing blows up. Like we got to think differently now. You laughing? I'm dead serious. Like I would probably definitely buy a Winnebago, top of the line.
Uh-huh.
So we did take a trip in a Winnebago at the beginning of the pandemic, which was nice. And so luxury, I would probably have to have one of those if we need to be on the go.
Hmm.
But I think we got to plan on how we're going to survive this thing. So some tunnels, some underground tunnels, spaceship type stuff.
Yeah.
I'll be looking into that.
Got it, got it. Um, no, that's good. That's good. That's a unique response. I haven't heard that yet. Uh, Is there anyone you would like to thank or express your appreciation for that you haven't had the chance to yet?
Um, well, I don't think I've thanked anybody yet, so I would thank my sister because she really did take good care of me, and I was mad at her and misdirecting that energy. So she's been a wonderful, wonderful sister over the years. Even when I was really young, and she tortured me, um, it was still out of fun, you know. And I would thank my partner too, because I think without him, I was probably just be in the bed all day, every day. And so he helps to get, being in the house with someone else and someone else that's supportive. It just helps to stay motivated. And gosh, I think I would thank also my girlfriends. Now, it's funny as people would think, if I say I have 5 or 6 best friends, people typically say, "How do you got 5, 6 best friends?" Like either you have a best friend or you don't. But I have like a handful of women who have taken care of me since my mom died, who were even my same age, and so um, my best friend Tammy, Charmaine in this moment, Erica, Sherelle, even some of the ones that I don't talk to often, they have taken care of me over the years. And so I'm very thankful for my girlfriends.
Nice, nice. All right, for our final question, how do you define success?
Well, how do I define success? I'm not sure. For some reason, what keeps coming to my mind is happiness in terms of being able to achieve and maintain those things that make you happy. Um, I think in terms of like career wise, I've been successful at that as far as being able to do something that I'm passionate about and excel being my authentic self. Like I don't change for anybody. It's like this is what you get wherever I go. And so I think for me, that's been a marker of success is being my authentic self and staying true to who I am and being able to excel even despite it all. And then being able to sustain happiness, I think is what I would say success is, because even if you have, the job with where you get all the money, people are happy. And so I think for me, happiness is a true marker of success, regardless. And it has very little to do with money or status, even though that's generally how success is defined. But people are miserable. Even when they have these big jobs and this big money, they are miserable. And so that to me is not success.
Yeah. Beautifully said. We connected. We polished. And it was it was a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the first draft of that masterpiece that you're working on.
Yeah, I better. I'm getting there. Look, you see, I got my hands looking crazy because I've been productive during the pandemic, and I think I burnt my fingertips off from typing in a trackpad.
Oh, really?
Yes. People haven't heard of this. I need to get a mouse and a keyboard, apparently. But this is what writing the book looks like for me.
You could also dictate.
I know. I started doing that too. So late, but I'm gonna work. I got to do something because my fingertips are gone. But thank you for the conversation.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.